Welcome to this Learning Lab hosted by KDVI Institute. I will open up this session and it will be closed by Claire Pointing, who will actually lead you towards the next version of this, which is going to take place on Thursday. Before we get started, a few moments of Zoom hygiene, as we might say. First of all, if you would keep your devices on mute if you're not actually speaking, to eliminate background noise. If you do need to say anything, if there's an invitation to say anything, please just put your hand up rather than chime in so that it doesn't get too much of a zoo. We're going to have a couple of breakout sessions during this particular session. And when we do that, it would be great if you would appoint a note taker so that when we do the report backs at the end, back into the plenary, we have someone who is the chosen speaker, so that again, it becomes smooth and we can go around our virtual room pretty quickly. When you do report back, I should say that your comments should be non-attributed, just report back in a general sense. This session will be recorded and you'll be able to hear it if you do want to listen to it again at some point down the road. We will send you a link, and also the slides that Thomas presents will be available to you. And then finally, we're going to use a little piece of technology called Mentimeter. If you were at the last session, you will have become experienced already in using that. If not, the only thing you will need is a device that's attached to the internet in some way, and then you will be able to use this technology during the session. So it's my great pleasure to introduce my friend, Dr. Thomas Hellwig. Thomas is a colleague of mine at INSEAD Business School, where he's a professor of organizational behavior. He's also a trained psychotherapist. He's a father, he's a husband, he's a real rarity, and he's one of the few Germans in the world with a sense of humor. I know he'll allow me to say that. And I'm going to hand over to you right now, Thomas, to introduce your session, which is very topical: success and failure in crisis, balancing EQ and IQ. Very best. Over to you, Thomas.
Thank you very much, Graham, and thank you for this nice introduction. Looking at some of your faces, and well, here's my encouragement. Put your video on. You don't have to look at your best. This is my office. I haven't tidied it up, so certain things I'm not proud on. You don't have to be proud on, but I think the one thing that I want to say for this here is engagement. We need to engage. People talk about, and we talked about last time, there's physical distancing, but we need socially the contact even more. And seeing your pictures and just moving a little bit the head, and so gives me already like the sign, like you are with me and you are with the others. We need all each other. So let me introduce you that here. And some of you, I see some faces that I've seen last week or a couple of weeks or 10 days ago exactly, when we did the first part. This is a series. For those who have been in the first part, it's a continuation. We dive deeper into something we left it where we left it last time. For those who haven't attended it, well, there's still notes available. And perhaps at the end, we're going to show you also, like, we've written it up as a nice little summary where you can access them and even share them with other people if you want. So with all of that, I don't want to take more time of talking about me. Graham did that already. And hearing from a Brit that I've got a sense of humor, I always don't know how to take that. It means like I don't have it, because I spent my entire career, or half of my career in medicine at least, on understanding what the British say and what they mean. And I haven't come anywhere close. So anyway, with all of that said, what we want to talk today is about, well, leadership, and to a certain degree also like, well, emotional reactions. So we put it in the terms of EQ and IQ, and some purists here in the room will say, oh, is it really what we're talking about, or is it something else? We can come to that later on, but I want to say it's topical, and I want to say we want to look in certain leaders, we want to also look at ourselves. So always this sort of the meta step of saying what's going on in terms of leadership, but also what's going on with ourselves and our clients. And I'm pleased to see that they're not only coaches here in the room, they're clients of KDVI, and we are in this space together. We are in this space together, and we want to discover certain things together, and that's pretty much what we're doing here. I'll give you some context, I give you certain inputs perhaps, but you're owning it. And there will be interaction, there will be interaction through different channels. And we want to explore that together. No slides, but I create the slide with you on a whiteboard. Now, let me start by doing exactly that. So I'm going to switch now into onto my iPad, and let's see whether that technology also works. Yeah. Oh. Not quite there, but we're getting there. So let's try that once again. Good. Now with these sort of little technical ellipses. Up. Good. Let me just put here, this is my little whiteboard that we are create here a little bit together. So leadership in crisis, and not only this crisis, but crisis in general. We talked about that a little bit last time already. What makes a good leader in this crisis? Some of you might have dived into this little pre-reading we had. And to a certain degree, well, whether it's what people talked about, but this question like what makes a good leader, some people would agree leaders force the best and the worst out in, crisis force the best and the worst out in certain leaders. And we see that in the current crisis, certainly in some of the leaders that we are familiar with. So what are sort of common from research and practice sort of things we can say on that? And that's interesting. So there seemed to be pretty much of an agreement that somehow leaders and in crisis, they need to be good in decision making and managing the stress. Decision making and managing stress. Some people would say, oh, that's a little bit too small. We can't say that. Let's look perhaps a little bit into what sort of examples could we have there. So our examples sometimes what we relate to are certain examples. They're pretty good in, well, many times we use war examples. It's interesting to see that in literature and when people refer to what are good leaders in crisis, so classical names come up. So there's, of course, Winston Churchill. There could be our dear friend here in France, Charles de Gaulle. People in crisis, they talk always about, oh yeah, if we could have a leader like him. Yeah, and for the Americans, if we have some Americans in the room, there could be also like, sometimes Roosevelt is also used as an example there. What do they have, these people? Very often people are saying, well, what they're very good in is, to a certain degree, critical thinking, and problem solving. Now, some people might say, is that all they're good in, or is there not something else? Let's leave that for time being on this one. Now, some people might say, well, that's, to a certain degree, that's the mental side. That's the mental side. They're pretty good in taking this decision, managing the stress through mental capabilities they've got. Interesting, when we now look at the current situation, when we see some of the leaders, and here I want to say, like, it's extremely interesting, I find from a research point of view as well, to look in, we've got here something in common, and what we see to a certain degree, the leaders who actually excel here, they rather have something, they manage to a certain degree, they manage emotions, and relationships. Now, when we look at some of the leaders, we can say they're doing pretty good on that. It's interesting to see. They have something in common, and let you work that out for yourself. I want to give you some examples. So the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, is one of them. We've got also somebody else called Angela Merkel. And some of the Scandinavian leaders, like, for example, the Norwegian one, Solberg. Now, you look at these people on each side, they all have something in common, and we call that gender. As you already worked out quite easily, so we've got here rather male-dominated, and we've got these current leaders there, what they're doing, it's rather female. So why do I call these leaders of today that they excel? You look at the way that they handled the crisis and took decisions early on. You look at the figures in these countries of the coronavirus, it's outstanding how Jacinda Ardern, Angela Merkel and Solberg, and they have done that through managing relationships and emotions. Now we're going to look into that a little bit further. That here, when we just take that, so we're here on emotional and mental. Emotional and mental. So fair enough, this might not be exactly the full construct of IQ, EQ, but I don't care about it. We stop here by saying mental and emotional is important of handling crisis. Whether these male leaders from the wartime might have not done that, I leave that. This is not a gender session, but I just want to, it's an interesting observation first of all. Now, this is now the first interaction time because I've already covered here quite a bit. I want you now to actually involve you here. And if you've got your, any sort of devices, people, as Graham said, can be your mobile phone that you've got nearby probably all the time. But I want you now to connect to something called the Mentimeter, and you go to mentee.com. We've put that in the invitation already, and you see that now also on the slide. Now, pretty easy, it's written all there. You go to mentee.com with your mobile phone, with your cell phone, and they ask you about a code, and the code is this 6-digit number there. Now, what is the question? How much do you focus on emotional and mental aspects in the current crisis? And here is, well, you assess between 1 and 10, between your mental focus, your client's mental focus, your emotional focus, and your client's emotional focus. Yeah? And don't make it too much of, this is not an intellectual exercise. It's a good enough assessment. So we've got here always an early starter. There's probably my dear friend Graham. He's always early out of the blocks. But you see how that emerging. 2 people have already like put it in there. And the more people we get in there, the more we participating here and we see how it is. It could be a tie altogether, but let's wait for a little bit longer until we've got people coming in here. So we're seeing that, well, there can be always like a little sort of, it's going up and down, and you see, I mean, when you look at it, there's always like, when you just see the one figure, it's pretty different from one to another, and in a short while, you can actually talk about it also, like when we come into the breakout room sessions. Got so far 22. Quick check with Alicia, how many people do we have in? Is that?
We have 27.
27, yeah, good, okay. Still stays open for a little moment, but what can we see? There seem to be, on your clients, at least the way you perceive it, less of a mental focus than an emotional focus. And also we might say it's an emotional focus for yourself, higher than the mental focus. Is it good or bad? We don't know. I want to go with that for a little moment. It's just first initial point. And I just want to go here to, so we're going back into that and it's still open for you. Now, let me go back into my little whiteboard. And this sort of whiteboard we're gonna now see appear again. So, I'm just putting that a little bit bigger. So what can we say now? key things to say. There's both sides are important, and how can we go about these two sides? Certain things that we can here come together by saying there's certain key things we might say. And these key things, they are, for instance, that there need to be somehow of a balance. And we come to this balance in a moment, but well, what are these things that we are looking at that we can say on that? So, so I would say, first of all, we need somehow a balanced leader. A leader is not only good when he or she treats one sort of side, but we need balanced leaders. Balanced leaders. Second thing is, to a certain degree, we also need an agile mindset. An agile mindset. And we come to that, what that means. But let's put it here in for a little moment. And perhaps last but not least, there's also people saying we need reflection. These leaders also need reflections. Good, let me, here, this is something that I'm saying that partially from something that people say, well, this is research driven, but also something like partially when you look in the literature, and I can say something to you, what do we find as three key challenges that people come across? And here, let's just put these three challenges that people find that we all need to handle, your clients need to handle, leaders need to handle. There's one thing called distraction. The challenge of distraction. What is the challenge of distraction? We need to constantly go in between the big picture and sorting out something very operational. So we are pulled down. Last time we talked about, well, the balcony and being on the dance floor. Operational, ad hoc management, but then also shifting out. And there's always distraction coming in by yet another call, by yet the kids who come in, or whatever it is. Second thing that we see sometimes, it's how do leaders, how do we handle our ego? You will explore that in a moment in the breakout rooms, but what do I mean by that? On a bigger scale, we can see that certain people, they need to be seen as it's me who's doing that. And sometimes I feel, what can I contribute? What's the little thing I contribute? I feel useless. How much do I put my ego in front or not? Is a big question on that. So it's a challenge. These are challenges, what I'm putting up here. And the third one is, last time we already talked about it, we will talk about that a little bit further. It's called empathy. So how much empathy? How do I handle empathy? There's a need for empathy, but I mean, how do I handle that? And sort of these three challenges, we want to now explore a little bit. How do we handle that? How do your clients handle that? And that pretty much brings me to, well, setting up now the little time together. So in a moment, you'll be in the group setting. And for this group setting, I want to give you actually the question. It's actually a question or two questions if you want. And then I explain you how we do that in the group setting. But essentially you see on the left-hand side there, the challenge of distraction, the challenge of ego, the challenge of empathy. Now, how do I handle that for myself? How do I see other people handling these challenges of distraction? It can be very physical because we are together with all these different identities, being the homeschool teacher for my kids, doing something there, doing something else. How do I handle that are sometimes useful or not useful? How do I let my ego taking over? And how do I handle the need for an empathy that I have for myself, but also for others? Now, this is enough basically. And what I'm saying to you is pretty much, so the two aspects here are, well, it's about you and it's about your clients. Yeah. So the question pretty much is, how do you handle the challenges? How to handle the 3 challenges. And let me say now just so this is the one question, but of course with 2 dimensions, it's you and the client, your clients. Clients can be larger. It's not just the person you work for. Clients are also business partners, sometimes the others around us. Yeah, keep that a little bit more beyond that. So you is the one aspect, and the second aspect is the others in terms of your clients. Just waiting for the people coming back, and as you know, like in the real learning classroom, it's always like some people still hanging somewhere on the coffee machine, and they don't come back, and then the coordinator trying to get them in, and then so on. Now here's the good news: it takes far less time in the virtual session than it does take in real life. So we can probably divide it by 3 or 4, factor 3 and 4 until they come back. So I think, Alicia, we're good to go?
Yeah, everyone's back. There's 29 of us, so I think we're all
Great.
back.
Excellent. So, of course, the question would be like, how was it? Let's go around all the room. And so now here's something which we want to hear from some of you, but we also want to hear from all of you. And this almost sounds like a mission impossible, but we want to have, first of all, and hear some from every one of you. What have you discussed, how we handle these challenges, you and your clients? And then we hear from some of them, from some of you from the groups. Now, if you could take now, once again, your other device, like for example, mobile phone, we go back to what I shared with you beforehand. So the mentee.com, it's the same code. Yeah, you need to do probably a refresh when you're still on the other page or so. But basically, how do you handle the 3 challenges in the crisis? Yeah, there's too much, but there we go. That's my poor spelling. So how do you handle the 3 challenges in the crisis? It's pretty much the question. And if when you put something in, so it's actually a written comment. This is not a number you put in there, but a written comment, and it's about you. The 3 challenges is the distraction, the ego, and the empathy. Now you don't need to do something from it. So don't write a long text. State in the morning or staying in the moment is one person who shared that. Very good. Finding balance, setting boundaries, and focusing. Mindfulness does come up. And you see like all of your inputs will sort of little by little come in there. You could even put more than 1 comment in if you feel like one was not enough. Meditation, accept that is what it is. Accept the distraction, started to like it. More distracted, trying to not expect too much. Daily yoga, turn off alerts. Silence. So the importance of silence in this sort of time becomes even more interesting. Take time to ground myself, talk to others to better understand the other. Positive distraction, contain the ego, be in their shoes. We talked about 2. So this is already like a little summary that this person is giving there. Manage distraction by a structure for the day, spend new activities. Okay, we're pretty much there. Then let me go to the next one. And now it's about your clients, the people around you. People around you, how do they handle these 3 challenges? How do they handle these 3 challenges? Yeah. So it might be similar to, it might be differently. It might be similar, it might be differently, but you need to do a refresh and then put some input in there. Coaching. So there is more and more coaching going on. We as an institution at KDVI, we perceive that as well. Initially, there was probably nothing at all, and then people saying, but this could help. Retreat into action. So it's almost like, seems like an escape there. Busyness and magical thinking. It's interesting, it's not the word creative, but magical. Therapy, walks in nature, learning new skills, some barely controlled panic. Interesting. Predefined structure and routine, denial. And we talked about this curve, basically, if you remember that from those who, some people are still in denial and they're still in this honeymoon or heroic phase, and they don't actually make something. Learning new skills. Good, and you see distraction, homeschooling, lack of boundaries, ego. So some people perceive that they actually struggle with that as well. Creating new project, analysis paralysis. Okay, very good. And people also come with some sort of here, sort of comments, negative comments. Let's do a little bit of sharing. So this still will be on the, basically on the, coming up there, but Alicia, if you want to, you've got an overview on the groups basically, just which of the groups actually, and you can do that, for instance, through just, we want to hear at least from 2 or 3 groups, something that you've discussed. Which group would like to actually share something they discussed that they find important to share?
If you want to just put your hand up on the, you'll find it in the participants section, there's a little blue hand, and then you'll know to unmute you.
So Nancy, I think you wanted to say something? I think you need to unmute. It seems like Alicia, she's not unmuted.
So I'm unmuted now, I think.
She is unmuted.
Okay, good. So in our group regarding distraction, there were a few things that came out that were somewhat common. One was that indeed homeschooling, or let's say physical distractions, both for us, and someone mentioned that their clients also in some cases had parents living with them. So let's say the duties of home, and then also the idea of also the boundaries, you know, the boundaries not being there. There isn't a workspace and a home space for those who had an office. Many people mentioned that they found that they find quiet moments, whether it would be in the garden or moments at home, and then actually ask themselves in a way, why haven't I found these before when I was, you know, working in the office, and how important those would be going forward. So I think there was an appreciation for what came through the antidote to the distractions and finding that's valuable going forward as well.
Very good. I like that. Yes. Any other groups who want to? So there are 2 people who raised their hand. I think it's Katie. Katie?
Hi, Thomas. Yeah, thank you. We were discussing distractions, and by the way, we were all EMCC alum, which was quite lovely. So we had that immediate bonding moment in our breakout. But Frank came up with a framing of positive distractions, which I think grabbed our attention, that we can see these as negative, but also there's a positive nature to some of them. There's chance to engage with our families or engage back with these domestic responsibilities. That can be a sort of simplifying of life, in a sense, a little bit of slowing down. So I think that was a very nice framing. We don't have to see distractions as all negative. And then the last few minutes, we were talking about ego, both our own, but also others, and seeing this need to sometimes be busy, to want to be helpful, whilst not necessarily knowing what the role is or how to do that. And the need for compassion, compassion towards self and compassion towards others.
I like that very much. Thank you. I'm just taking a little bit of notes of what you just said there as well. Yes. Anybody else who wants to share something still from the group discussion? It doesn't have to be reporting back, because this always makes it a little bit like being in a school or so. But any group who feels like we want to share here still something of what we discussed.
I have
Okay. Yeah.
I have something from our group that I thought was very important, that the sense of being out of control and how distracting that can be, and this sense that there's a lot of responsibility. I think one person in particular in our group has a heavy burden in an organization, I think, and the challenge of the uncertainty and the lack of safety for a number of their employees, and the questioning of what's the right thing to do, and then how that impacts a person's home life, even though they're working from home. But how to balance the presence of your home with also your professional responsibility was something that I thought was notable.
Very good. I like that. Yeah. And I think, Oriana, you wanted to say something as well?
Yeah, I've learned that as a co-host, you don't have the option to raise your hand. I thought it was interesting to think about, I think, Robert, you mentioned having the kind of the competencies or being familiar, working with change already, sort of prepares you maybe to navigate this a little bit better, but that clients were less prepared. And I thought that was an interesting idea, that, you know, how can you prepare yourself better to manage change? What are the kinds of things that it's good to understand about change and about the process of change that that can stand you in good stead in a situation as such as this?
Very good. Great. I took some notes here as well. Let me just, to sum this up and then to go to the next phase here, let me just do the following and share once again a little bit something. And I like some of the things you said. Oh, this is not. So we heard, Katie said that, but also Nancy in some of the comments. It's pretty much what people at the moment feel, where sometimes could be some sort of, how can we turn these perhaps challenges into not something negative? We need distraction as much as we need sometimes an ego that helps us in this crisis, and we need certainly empathy. These are not just negative things, but how can we turn it into positive things? And if we're saying like the distraction can be, and through some of the measures, how can we do that? The word mindfulness, the word sort of have the distractive moment. I cannot constantly work on 8 hours on it, but I need my little moments of distraction. Might it be the homeschooling, might it be, I can turn that into by being mental agile around that. And that can be something positive if we formulate it this way. When it comes to ego, well, what is appropriate on that? And that means like, when do I need to go up front and take a certain things and put myself perhaps in there? And when do I need to step back, of not falling in love with myself, of being there? Let me make you a very personal example. Some of you know that I actually volunteered, and I said that last time, going back into and joining the geriatric hospital at the moment, which pretty much, well, this is where the music actually plays. We've got almost half of the patients who have the virus, and you say like, well, what is appropriate? I don't see myself as a hero, but I see myself as looking between the consequences and what is the value, and what I need to do there, and how do I take that on? I don't see myself as a hero there, but I see myself in taking a certain share in that. And when it comes to empathy, I can also have too much empathy, not only me, but all of us. And the word compassion, I think Katie used, well, I'm not sure whether Katie or Nancy was, but you said it as well, compassion comes into there. Compassion, what is the difference? Some people are saying it's not the same. I think compassion goes into not only I put myself into your shoes, but also I do actively something to actually help you with that. And that's goes a little bit beyond that. We can discuss that offline. and it's not a semantic discussion, but I think in all of these are challenges at the same time. These are moments that can share and help us. Now, let me now go into the next part, and I want to set you up now for another yet little round of discussion. And I want to talk for a little bit on now emotional intelligence. Now, you did a little survey it's not a survey, it's actually a self-assessment, but many of you, especially I heard some there CCC or EMC or EMCCC, whatever wave you are in, graduates. It's interesting. So you have come across in one of the modules there probably already. Emotional intelligence is not only what Daniel Goldman made out of it, but there's much more deeper going research in it. And you have been familiar through Howard Book, who actually was talking there, and he's written, for example, the book of EQH, which is quite interesting to read, and also like lots of data there. So emotional intelligence, now we really want to say not only emotional and mental, but here we're going into emotional. And I'll put you up, so some of you have been familiar already beforehand. By the way, what I put up is a self-assessment. It's almost like a quick face validity. That's why I sent that to you yesterday, just to get these dimensions clear, not to spend too much time on it in the given time we've got. We would rather want you to discuss on the topic, not so much on the semantics of the different things there. But what I want you in a moment discuss there is this model. Many people refer to emotional intelligence just on, oh yeah, it's about how I feel and I express myself and how I deal with others. So it's almost like these three first steps: self-perception, self-expression, and interpersonal side. What I like in this model is it goes further and it touches on decision-making and stress management. Now, if you remember on the slide that I just left, this is part of what many people are saying we need in crisis. We need people who can take good decisions and where we also can manage, who can manage the stress of them, their stress and others. So if we take this one and saying, fair enough, it speaks to something, and I think probably it's fair to say we all need a little bit of that, and it goes into something that is important for ourselves, but also for others. So what I want you to a little bit explore in a moment is the following. So I want you, well, for a little moment to explore in the groups. Yes, you've done perhaps even like the real survey, but you've done perhaps just this quick and dirty assessment of where do you stand. You might go on the competency level, but you can stay on just the 5 dimensions. And you can say, well, where are we high? Where are we low? Where do we feel like we are actually excelling? Where is it where I'm actually not so good? Now there are 15 dimensions of 15 competences of that. For those who want to feel like we're familiar with it, you can go as much as the competency level. I don't want to stop you there. Make it the decision in your group, where you go. For those who want to stay just on these 5 dimensions, self-perception, self-expression, interpersonal, decision-making, and stress management, you can do as well. So I want to just say, like, where am I high, where am I low? Here again, 2 dimensions. One is for yourself, and you can say, so it's you and it's your clients. Your clients, again, the people around the term clients can be larger or smaller. You decide how you take that. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that session and talking to other people about it. Now, let's just hear first of all, perhaps from a couple of people in the moment, but I just want to get first of all, I know a little bit what you've put in already beforehand when we did this survey, you recovered your result, but I want to hear first now from, if you could, no, this is not what we wanted, but this one here. So if you can take the Mentimeter once again, so your mobile phone, yeah, and then the question basically behind is, how do you rate your client's EQI? And here we don't want to go all the competency level, not only just the five, basically the 5 different dimensions, high or low, just to see whether when you look at your clients, how aware or not aware are they? How much do they do on self-expression, interpersonal decision-making, and stress management? Now, so one person, we've got somebody quick out of the blocks. We want to see like how that eventually comes by. In the beginning, there are bigger moves to be seen, and then eventually it might level out, might not level out. We see how that goes. 15 people so far. Or probably we've got between 25 or so.
Thomas, can you share your screen? Because I can only see the EQI 2.0 model.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I'll do that in a minute. There we go. Yeah. Sorry, that was, thanks for letting me know about that. So here it is. We've got 20 people so far in. Let's see whether, now we might say, well, it's pretty much on a similar level, but decision-making seems to be much higher. They want to say, and on the other side, then the self-awareness seems to be lower, as much as your perception goes. Of course, you see like it's always very much of a curve. Some people went more to the extreme than others. Now let's just now hear from the different groups. If a couple of people want to share something from their groups. Some people might say, oh, we went into the dimension, the competency level of the 15 competencies, if you're familiar with that. Who wants to share? I can't see anybody raises their hand or so. We probably want to see who wants to share something where you took that. So it's Christelle. Christelle, can you unmute yourself and say something?
Yeah. We had the first conversation, but at the end we landed in, I think, and my group can raise their hands, I think we handled our own, right, with all the work we need to do ourselves. But the difficulty resides more in understanding how others are actually doing, so that we connect at the right level. And that seems to be the common theme for us, meaning that we manage. We know we are high, low, but we manage. But understanding where the others are is more complicated in terms of interpersonal relationship.
That's an interesting notion. I like that. And at the same time, well, do we really know if we don't have the exchange or not where we are? We think we know. And sometimes I think about, do I really know where I stand? Or do I just think I know? It's almost like a couple of notions on that. Great. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else who wants to share? Flores.
Yes, I think in our group it was a very interesting discussion on the self-awareness of the leaders that are we're dealing with in coaching. The first one was the leaders that start to realize that things are changing, empowerment. They've delegated empowerment through the crisis committees, through needed structures, and whether they will allow those empowerment structures and say, okay, let me manage afterwards in the same situation or style that I'm managing now. Though we were questioning with the high level of narcissism in management or in leadership, whether they're not going to take that back or want to be confirmed afterwards that they still got worth, and therefore even take a bigger chunk back in their hands to prove that they are still in control. And then the last comment I was very interested in is Karen mentioned that if the leaders are not going to change for the future on this self-awareness, the employees actually became much more aware of the interpersonal need or the interpersonal relationship. And if these leaders do not increase their self-awareness on where they stand with themselves, they might lose a lot of their employees just because there was an absolute awareness make process through this crisis. So a very interesting discussion on what is happening at the moment as what can follow afterwards.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Now let me take you, in the interest of time, also like a little bit back, and we're going to share that afterwards with you as well. So I'm going back here to my white sheet, and let's just share a little bit. So I asked you beforehand, and I got almost 50%, a little bit more, even like 60% of people responded to this self-assessment. So we can even go one level deeper beyond the dimension to the competencies, the 15. And here's how it looks like in terms of when we look at them. So where do you consider yourself, you rather as a group, higher or lower? And people feel like, well, yeah, on the empathy side, I'm rather excelling. And on the self-actualization, so the pursuit of meaning or so, that's where I'm excelling. Now, where perhaps rather on the lower is sometimes the self-awareness. And Claire and I, we had, Claire Pauli and I, we had the discussion, like sometimes, well, it might even change, like what I think I thought about myself in 2 weeks ago might not be where I am standing today. And sometimes I only discover it little by little. Some people here also said, well, emotional expression, which is part of self-expression, is also not where we're excelling, where we're rather low, and the impulse control. Now, how much is that only like crisis dependent, or how much is that actually something that was sleeping with us and we had always covered it so nicely, so well? Now, as the last bit I want to say, as many of you, especially the ones who actually went to a Howard Book's session or so, know it's not about whether your strengths and your low points, your highs and your low behind that survey. And I can vividly, well, actually recommend to all of you doing the certification. It's actually a tool I rediscovered recently, and I find that it's very meaningful, and it helps me in many ways. It helps me for myself, but also in my work with clients. And it's about finding balance here as well. We've got highs and we've got lows. But sometimes we're saying, okay, that's normal, but there's imbalances, and these imbalances to understand. Now it could be just sometimes here's the one imbalance. In coaching, I say to people sometimes, I find out there's one imbalance that could make the difference. That it could be actually the turbo, somehow the magic stick for you. And let me just share with you, and that's knowledge that you probably all have and probably can say, yes, I know that from my coaching, some of the common things that are, in the interest of time, I don't want to pick on all of them. Let me just take this self-regard and self-actualization and the flexibility and problem solving. Now, how would it look like? Somebody is very high on problem solving, but low on flexibility. Now, we have seen these leaders, and you work with these leaders. They are incredibly good in sorting out any problem under the sun, but it has to be my way or the highway. I don't take any sort of, there's an option B in there. I might want to say that's wonderful sometimes. We want this sort of leader sometimes in crisis, but it could also lead us straight into a nowhere when it's the wrong way to go there. And that's an interesting. Now the other, so this could be an effective project manager, but who never allows other people to come in there? How can we help him, her, to actually boost the flexibility by saying, we don't want you to lose your great skill of problem solving, but we want you to actually boost your skill of also listening to the others, your team, your stakeholders out there in the company and the organization. Now, the one that I want to actually now also say, which many of you are familiar, and it could be the other way around, by the way, somebody who's high on flexibility, but who cannot solve the problem, then we're turning into circles. I rather want to go to this other one as well, the self-regard and self-actualization. Now, how would that look like? Self-regard is also being aware of my strengths and weaknesses. Self-actualization is pursuit of meaning. Something that many of you probably have seen in coaching, people sky high on self-actualization, but actually lower on the self-regard. And to put a name to that, we call it the imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome means like, I achieve, but I'm not able to say, hey, this was really good what I've achieved. It's always never good enough. How can we truly help these people to embrace, and you've got many ways to go by, celebrate your successes and your team's successes, but being aware where you're strong, where you're not strong, and also bringing that into that. When we actually bring that together, it can be the other way around, which I'll leave for another session perhaps to dive into that. But these sort of imbalances you see in the work with yourself, but also in the way that you come and work with your clients. Now I want to come here to an end by saying, where do we go from here? Of course, this is not good enough. Just want to say a couple of perhaps, well, things to say. As I said a minute ago, I rediscovered, it was almost like a renaissance of this model, which has been around for quite some time, and which I find in the current crisis is even more powerful, because it leads to the decision-making and stress management, which people consider this is what we need in the current crisis, but it links it also to what we see. The emotional balanced leader needs to have something of these other dimensions as well. Second thing to say, and some of you might actually, for those who work with clients as coaches or so, with KDVI, we're developing at the moment also like a little sort of using some of these tools and using some of the things we worked on myself, and I'm nodding here to Oriane. We actually have something ready to go with a workshop working towards stress management, and also like how can we help you as coaches who might be close to it, how can we help you as clients? So we address here into two different directions of doing that. And well, we are almost ready to launch, and watch this space at KDVI. Always something new is coming up, and I'm looking to Oriane. She's the one mastermind behind of getting us going. I'm not doing it on my own. It's together with Caroline Rook, many of you know, Manfred gets the freeze, of course, and Liz. So it's a strong team behind there. And perhaps last but not least, well, there's also very much of a personal aspect. Do take that, and we started by, there's also something me and my family and how I handle these challenges, these distractions. Take that in for yourself, and do come back to me, come back to us. Alicia and I, we will also write a little summary again, which we're going to post to you, and you get these two wonderful slides that we produced here together. I want to say a big, big thank you. This is a learning experience also for myself, and the last words, I owe now 1 minute to Claire to wrap it up.
Thanks, Thomas. That was a great session. I learned a lot and really triggered a lot of thinking, and I think that everyone's going to take a lot away from this, both in terms of revisiting the EQI model, but also sort of a framework in which we can sort of begin to think about what our clients are going through, but also what we're going through as well. So very, very helpful indeed. Thank you. And if you haven't seen Thomas's previous session, I really recommend that you go to the KDVI Learning Lab website and watch that as well, because he covered a sort of a slightly different perspective, and this is very much a companion piece to that. So I really, really recommend that. And indeed, Roger Lehman's session on fault lines and rackets as well. which we had late last week, which is well worth watching as well. Going to wrap up very quickly because I know we're out of time. Just to let you know that we're running another learning lab on Thursday, and that's going to be Graham Ward and myself, and we're actually moving into the world of what's changing in the system. And that might be small systems such as teams, and it might be big systems such as society. And what we're going to be looking at is really, what are we seeing that is emerging that is going to be a lasting change as a result of the crisis? And you're seeing lots of articles, lots of writing on this topic around, you know, is there going to be less commuting? Is there going to be less business travel? Are people going to work from home more? And we're aware that all that's out there, but we think there's a lot of other stuff going on as well, which are going to be either subtle or significant structural changes that we think it's worth spending some time being curious about. So that's what we're going to be doing on Thursday. And I really just want to leave you with a quote that I picked up when I was looking at some design thinking earlier in the week. And it just really seems to me to segue from what Thomas has been speaking about to what I hope we're going to be curious about on Thursday. And that is, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. And I think that there's something about, with our collective discussions, we can get a bit more clarity around that collective understanding of what the future might look like. So we look forward to seeing some of you on Thursday. We look forward to seeing you at other learning labs. And thank you very much for your contribution. You being here makes it a great learning experience for all of us. Thank you.